In 2019, at a motor show in Geneva, a single automobile sold for more money than the entire market valuation of several small manufacturing companies. $18 million. Not for a pristine museum piece pulled from a century-old private vault. Not for a Provenance-backed racer driven by Juan Manuel Fangio or Sterling Moss. $18 million for a single, one-of-one machine that had not even finished rolling off the assembly line. The buyer paid purely based on a silhouette, an aggressive stance, and a badge riveted to the center of the grille. That badge read Bugatti. Most people watching the headlines scroll by assumed it was a product of modern economic absurdity, tech bro liquidity, hypercar speculative bubbles, or an algorithmically inflated auction war. It was none of those things. That $18 million price tag was simply the latest installment of a relentless, obsessive story that began more than a century earlier inside a rented, drafty die factory, driven by a 19-year-old kid who had never constructed a complete automobile in his life. Before the hypercars, before the multi-turbocharged W16 engines, before lightweight carbon fiber monocoques, and long before $18 million wire transfers, the real narrative of Bugatti begins. It starts with an Italian name that half the world mispronounces, a factory located in a geopolitical tug-of-war, and a single tragic afternoon on a quiet country road that permanently severed the company's future. In August 1939, just days before the world collapsed into total war, Bugatti lost the single genius built to carry it into the modern age, just a few hundred yards from the factory gates. Before we walk through those gates, consider a detail often forgotten by history. By the mid-1930s, Ettore Bugatti had designed 6 of the most opulent, oversized, engineered road cars in human history, the Type 41 Royale. Every single unit was built with the explicit intention of selling exclusively to reigning European monarchs. Yet when the dust settled, not a single king ever purchased one. What became of those 6 gargantuan automobiles? How they vanished, survived, and ultimately transformed into the most valuable pieces of industrial art on Earth is a thread we will tie back to. To understand how those cars came to be, you first have to understand that Ettore Bugatti started with practically nothing. Born in Milan in 1881, Ettore Bugatti was surrounded by creative genius, though rarely financial stability. His father, Carlo Bugatti, was an internationally recognized designer whose furniture was so extraordinarily ornate, strange, and avant-garde that art historians still debate whether it belongs in an architectural gallery or a museum of eccentric artifacts. Ettore's younger brother, Rembrandt Bugatti, became a celebrated sculptor whose bronze animal figures captured a raw, tragic kinetic energy. Ettore was fully expected to follow the family path into fine art. Instead, as a teenager, his imagination was captured by something radically louder, dirtier, and vastly more dangerous: internal combustion engines. By his late teens, Ettore was working as an apprentice at a bicycle and tricycle manufacturing workshop in Milan. He didn't just absorb the basics of mechanics, he obsessed over them. Before he reached his 20s, he had already designed and assembled multiple functional motorized vehicles entirely from scratch. The young man possessed undeniable brilliant instinct, but he lacked capital. He had no industrial machinery, no investment funds, and no recognized brand. For nearly a decade, Ettore survived as an itinerant freelance engineer, moving from one industrial backer to another, licensing his personal patents to established manufacturers like De Dietrich and Deutz. He spent his early 20s watching other men's names stamped onto the engines and chassis he had painstakingly brought to life. He was on the verge of becoming nothing more than a historical footnote, a brilliant contract engineer working in the shadow of industrial titans. Then came 1909. Ettore packed up his young family and headed for Molsheim, a quiet, unassuming town located in the Alsace region. Geopolitically, Alsace was then part of the German Empire, though its cultural identity remained intensely, unapologetically French. Ettore did not build a state-of-the-art facility. He leased a neglected former dye manufacturing plant. The floors were rough, the equipment was sparse, and the funding was paper-thin, but it was his. It was in this modest setting that he engineered the first car to carry his name alone, the Bugatti Type 13. At a time when rival car manufacturers believed power was achieved exclusively by building massive engines mounted to heavy, carriage-like frames, Ettore took the inverse approach. The Type 13 was small, impossibly light, and scaled down like a surgical instrument. It was delicate in appearance, yet its mechanical layout was pure genius. Ettore engineered it with overhead camshafts and multi-valve cylinder heads, technology decades ahead of standard automotive design. He had effectively staked his entire future on an unproven philosophy that an automobile could be high-performance engineering and high art simultaneously, without sacrificing either. Every single component, even the bolts, safety wires, and suspension leaves, had to be visually beautiful as well as mechanically functional. Ettore refused to use gaskets if two metal surfaces could be machined precisely enough to seal against each other seamlessly. That single design philosophy, precision married to aesthetic purity, defined the brand, and the world noticed almost immediately. The Type 13 didn't just enter racing events, it dominated larger, heavier competitors through sheer power-to-weight superiority and cornering agility. In 1911, the tiny Type 13 shocked the automotive world by finishing second overall at the French Grand Prix against cars with engines 4 times its size. Shortly after, French manufacturer Peugeot licensed one of Ettore's lightweight city car designs, manufacturing thousands under the Bébé nameplate. For the first time in his life, Ettore had substantial financial freedom. Then came August 1914, and the outbreak of World War I shattered everything. Alsace sat squarely on the front line between warring nations. As a subject of the Italian realm living under German jurisdiction, Ettore's situation was precarious. He buried 3 complete racing chassis near the Molsheim plant to protect them from confiscation, gathered his technical drawings and fled, first to Milan, then to Paris. During the war, he dedicated his mind to aviation, designing high-output, dual-crankshaft U-16 airplane engines for the Allied forces. When the 1918 armistice was signed and the Treaty of Versailles returned Alsace to France, Ettore immediately returned to Molsheim. He dug up his buried race cars, reassembled the workshop, and prepared for the decade that would solidify his legend. The 1920s became Bugatti's golden era, anchored by one machine, the Type 35. Unveiled in 1924, the Type 35 is widely recognized as the most successful racing car in history. Over its operational lifespan, it accumulated more than 2,000 competitive victories across Europe. It was a masterwork of integrated design, the iconic horseshoe-shaped radiator, the revolutionary cast aluminum 8-spoke wheels that integrated the brake drums directly into the wheel structure to shed heat and unsprung weight, and the signature French racing blue bodywork. The Molsheim compound expanded far beyond a basic assembly factory. Ettore transformed it into an autonomous feudal realm. He built modern housing for his specialized craftsmen, operated a high-end hotel on-site to accommodate international clients arriving to commission bespoke coachwork, designed his own custom factory doors, and even bred purebred thoroughbred horses to ride around the grounds. Ettore wasn't just building cars, he was curating a lifestyle of absolute mechanical perfectionism. Naturally, this obsessive approach brought high-profile rivalries. By the late 1920s, Bugatti's primary competition on the endurance circuit came from across the English Channel, Bentley. The British cars were enormous, heavy, supercharged machines that dominated the 24 hours of Le Mans through sheer brute structural strength. Ettore famously dismissed W.O. Bentley's heavy engineering, remarking that Bentley built the world's fastest lorries. Bentley loyalists countered that their heavy, durable construction was superior for real-world endurance, whereas Bugatti's ultra-lightweight, high-precision engineering was fragile under brutal conditions. This fundamental debate, raw structural durability versus obsessive weight reduction and mechanical elegance, remains one of the most famous philosophical divides in motorsport history. During this peak of confidence, Ettore embarked on his most ambitious venture yet, the Bugatti Type 41 Royale. Ettore declared he would construct the most luxurious, powerful, and majestic automobile the world had ever seen. The specs were absurd: a wheelbase exceeding 15 feet, an overall length of nearly 22 feet, and a massive 12.7-liter straight-eight engine adapted from an aircraft engine design. It was capped with a custom radiator mascot, a rearing elephant sculpted by his late brother, Rembrandt. Ettore explicitly announced that the Royale was reserved exclusively for royalty. He priced it at more than 3 times the cost of the most expensive Rolls-Royce of the era. But the timing could not have been worse. Launched on the precipice of the Great Depression, even reigning monarchs and wealthy aristocrats found the pricing unjustifiable. Only 6 Royales were ever produced, and not a single one was purchased by an actual king. Ettore was left with unsold, gargantuan hyper-luxury cars sitting in storage while the global economy cratered. To save the company from bankruptcy, Ettore repassed those massive 12.7-liter Royale engines into a high-speed, multi-unit railcar system for the French National Railway network. The Bugatti railcar was an instant success, providing the revenue necessary to keep the Molsheim factory operational through the worst years of the Depression. While Ettore managed the commercial enterprise, the design future of the brand shifted to his eldest son, Jean Bugatti. Born in 1909, the exact year the company was established, Jean was raised entirely within the walls of the Molsheim factory. He was a natural talent, possessing his father's mechanical instinct combined with a modern sense of aerodynamic design. By his mid-20s, Jean was designing the company's most breathtaking vehicles. His masterwork was the Bugatti Type 57, specifically the legendary Type 57 SC Atlantic, featuring a lightweight teardrop body constructed from magnesium alloy panels riveted together with an external spine. The Atlantic was a masterpiece of Art Deco design. Jean was not merely the founder's son, he was the technical visionary, ready to take Bugatti into the modern era. Then came August 11, 1939. Jean was testing a Type 57 tank-bodied race car on a closed stretch of public road near the Molsheim factory, making final adjustments following a victory at Le Mans. Suddenly, a local cyclist strayed onto the test track. Swerving at high speed to avoid striking the cyclist, Jean lost control, left the road, and hit a tree. He died instantly at 30 years old. 24 days later, Germany invaded Poland, initiating World War II. The loss was catastrophic. Ettore was devastated, losing his son and chosen successor right as historical forces threatened to destroy everything he had built. When German forces occupied France, Alsace was formally annexed into the Reich once again. The Molsheim factory was seized and sold under coercion to German industrialist Hans Trippel. Ettore's dream was stripped from him, converted into a military manufacturing depot for amphibian vehicles and torpedo components. Exiled to Paris, Ettore refused to cooperate with the occupying authorities, watching from afar as his life's work was systematically repurposed by a war effort he abhorred. Following the Allied liberation of France, an aging and heartbroken Ettore fought a grueling legal battle through the French court system to reclaim legal ownership of the seized Molsheim property. In mid-1947, the courts finally ruled in his favor, restoring his assets. Shortly thereafter, Ettore was officially granted French citizenship, a symbolic recognition of his decades-long contribution to French industrial history. He never had the opportunity to rebuild. Ettore Bugatti passed away in Paris on August 21, 1947, at 65 years old, suffering from respiratory paralysis following a stroke. With both Ettore and Jean gone, Bugatti foundered. The factory attempted to continue production under Ettore's younger son, Roland, but without the singular genius of its founders. The original era of Bugatti quietly folded in 1952. The Molsheim gate swung shut, leaving behind a legendary legacy, dormant blueprints, and a handful of extraordinary motor cars scattered across private collections worldwide. Yet the philosophy Ettore established in 1909 proved impossible to kill. Those 6 Type 41 Royales, the hyper-luxury machines that kings refused to buy during the Great Depression, became the ultimate historical artifacts. Decades later, when they periodically surfaced at international auctions, they set world records, fetching tens of millions of dollars apiece. The market eventually validated Ettere's unyielding vision. True artistic and engineering absolute value transcends short-term economic downturns. In the late 1980s, Italian entrepreneur Romano Artioli acquired the rights to the Bugatti name, erecting a state-of-the-art facility in Campogalliano, Italy, and launching the groundbreaking EB110 hypercar. Though short-lived due to global economic headwinds, it proved that the world still hungered for the Bugatti ethos. In 1998, the Volkswagen Group purchased the rights to the brand with a single goal: to fulfill Ettere's original directive of uncompromising engineering without regard to cost or physical limits. They did not set up operations in Germany or England. They traveled back to Alsace, bought the original grounds of Chateau Saint-Jean, and rebuilt the company directly in Molsheim. It was in Molsheim that they engineered the Veyron, breaking the 1,000 horsepower and 250 millieffort barriers, followed by the Chiron, and ultimately, that $18 million machine unveiled in Geneva, the La Voiture Noire, built as a modern homage to Jean Bugatti's lost personal Type 57 SC Atlantic. That $18 million price tag was not an arbitrary modern marketing trick. It was the direct continuation of a philosophy established by a penniless 28-year-old moving into a dilapidated French dye plant in 1909. Ettore Bugatti bet his entire life on the radical premise that an automobile could be vastly more than a tool for transportation, that with enough obsessive passion, precise mechanical craftsmanship, and uncompromising artistic vision, a machine could become a priceless piece of art. He died before he could see just how right he was. The hypercars hand-assembled in Molsheim today, driving through the streets of Monaco or framed on bedroom walls across the globe, are built on the exact same ground where Ettore once rode his thoroughbred horses. Every single one carries the legacy of a vision born over a century ago, a legacy forged through financial ruin, extraordinary racing triumphs, devastating personal tragedy, and an absolute refusal to compromise.